Good afternoon, New York, and the rest of our listeners around the globe. My name is June Stoyer, and I'm the host of the Organic View Radio Show. Our podcast is available on iTunes, Zune, and you can also visit our website at www.theorganicview.com. If you have any questions for our guests, there are many ways you can contact the show. You can post a question on our wall on Facebook, Skype us, send us a tweet on Twitter to @TheOrganicView, or you can contact me directly at June Stoyer. If you'd like to be on the show or would like to find out about sponsorship opportunities, please contact us at questions@theorganicview.com. Today's topic, AnimalWorldUSA.org kicks off the first ever annual India Weeks for the animals. With over 1 billion people, the idea of having a pet is still a relatively new idea to India. There is no such thing as an infrastructure for pet adoption, TNR, which is Trap-neuter-release, much as how to cope with such a large animal population. Subsequently, India has one of the highest rates of rabies. One of the common problems concerns community dogs, which are dogs that simply roam the street. They're reproducing rapidly and subsequently are also being killed mercilessly, whether it's by a government animal control personnel or person or by cars or just out of starvation. There is very little concern for these animals as there is such fierce competition for food. Then there is a poaching problem where the illegal animal trade has thrived into almost a $10 billion trade. Anything large enough to be eaten or lucrative enough to be sold is hunted on a massive scale for its meat, skin, fur, feathers, for the pet trade, or simply as an ingredient in traditional medicines. There are so many animal welfare and animal rights issues that clearly the public needs to be continuously informed. Michelle Bucklew founded AnimalWorldUSA.org in order to create animal welfare awareness for regional issues as well as global issues. Throughout the year, different states and countries are being celebrated with events that are organized and promoted for an entire week-long celebration. Now, January 13th to the 31st kicks off the first annual Weeks for the Animals in India. The India Weeks for the Animals team is connecting and working with advocates and community leaders across India. They anticipate shining the spotlight on organizations as well as helping in any way possible, promoting life-saving and life-changing events that will help communities in beautiful India. On today's show, I have the pleasure of welcoming Eileen Weintraub. She is the founder and the president of Help Animals India. She has been doing some miraculous work over there, folks, and it's really great, all the different things that she's involved with. So I'd like to welcome Eileen to the show. Good afternoon, Eileen.
Good afternoon, June, and can I say namaskar or namaste, which is a traditional Indian greeting for the soul in me, welcomes and honors the soul in you and to all the listeners.
Well, thank you. Eileen, can you tell our listeners how you got involved with doing work with animals?
Okay, well, I've been an animal rescuer and animal advocacy person my entire life, and I became interested in India's religions at an early adult age as well. So when you combine the two, you get helping the animals in India. But I live here in Seattle, and I help by computer, and I call myself reverse outsourced. So instead of outsourcing the work to India, they're outsourcing the work to me. Because with our skills, the people that you hear about who are doing all the computer work in India for our country, they're mostly in the larger cities, and they're getting paid a lot by Indian standards. So in terms of helping the animal groups, the people on the ground working very hard who do not speak very good English and do not know how to apply for grants, we can really help them a lot from the States, and that's what I've been doing.
And that is really a very big task. I mean, you're doing this from halfway around the world. How do you manage to organize so much so far away?
Well, I visited India. I've been there 5 times. And it all got started with the beginning of the Internet age. We just started some of the first email reports, and when online donations happened, we started that. And we just started reaching out to different groups, chiefly the VSPCA, which is Visakha Society for Protection and Care of Animals. Now, this is a group that does not get that many Western tourists. People are seeing all sorts of things about incredible India, visit India, and it's really hard to get an on-the-ground impression that India is still a very poor country. Most of the people live in the rural environments. There was just a news article recently on the farmer suicides. So there's really a lot of struggle going on, and that's being compounded by all the issues that the rest of the world is facing. When the animal groups are trying to make a difference, they are just so overwhelmed by all the challenges. And as I always say, there's good people all over the world making a difference, whether for the animals or people, but they're simply not discovered. And it's up to us who have the means to travel and meet these people to make a difference when we can. And I was fortunate enough to be given the opportunity to do that these past almost 10 years now.
Wow, you've been involved in so many different projects. Let's start off with the community dogs. Can you explain to our audience that is not familiar with India or just the whole concept of a community dog, what exactly it's like there and what they mean by that?
Okay, well, a community dog is a more polite way of calling the stray or the street dogs. They're not really feral dogs. Our country had dogs running around maybe 50 years ago, maybe 40. There's some parts of this country that still have stray dogs running around, some of the poorer areas. Mostly it's a problem of a lot of trash around, rubbish, so they have things to eat on the street. Now, the British started killing the dogs when they came into India 100 years ago, and the killing didn't work. It was just too hard. They would always increase their numbers. So you have any city of India, any a small town of India, you have the dogs, and it's a controversial issue because of the rabies problem. And India has one of the highest incidences of rabies in the world. But in 1960, the India Animal Group started doing TNR. We call it ABC, or Animal Birth Control. And that was and mostly to decrease the rabies problem. And there was some funding from the government to do that because rabies is considered a human health concern. There was no funding to help the animals in general. The India Animal Groups do not get, there's no like SPCAs that get money from the government to run. But there was some funds to help with animal birth control. And the groups in India have been working really hard these last almost 40 years now in terms of getting the street dog numbers down humanely. Sometimes it's not so humane, and the governments do come in and have mass killings. Right now in other countries, like I just read in Russia, they just kill the dogs, like in China also. India has some of the most advanced animal protection laws in the world, so they do understand the concept of being kind to animals, so they don't want to kill the dogs. So that's why we're busy doing the animal birth control for the dogs.
And I think that is a very important part that most people don't understand, that because of the fact that most of the population they are vegetarian, they do see the value in animals, and they do have respect for animals. Mm-hmm. Now, what was it like working with the government? Obviously, as you pointed out, that the government, they do have some of the most advanced laws. Like, can you elaborate on some of the laws that are clearly more advanced than any place else?
Well, I'd just like to say a little bit about the heritage of India's history in terms of people and animals. there was a golden period in the year 3000 BC where no hunting and no killing was allowed, and that comes down to this day in certain religious scriptures. So there's really a strong sense that almost anyone would understand that killing is bad. In terms of the government, there's a wonderful animal rights activist named Maneka Gandhi, and she was related to one of the Gandhis, and she has been at the forefront of changing the laws in India, and she was had in official positions. So that where India had laws to protect the cows, she wanted the laws to protect all the animals. So there's very, very strict laws. There's something called the Animal Welfare Board of India, and there's many pages and pages of how animals can be treated. Unfortunately, in day-to-day life, these aren't followed. Now, if you go to India and you see, people see the tourist trade and you see the snake charmers or the performing monkey, all this is actually illegal. You cannot possess wildlife like that and use it for your own purposes.
Now, that's a really interesting point that you make, because in the United States, as we know, there are people. I've interviewed Laura Lassiter and Carol Baskin from Big Cat Rescue. There are people that actually purchase these exotic animals as pets. And here in the United States, there aren't any laws, to really protect these animals. And the thing is that these animals become enormous when they become full size, when they're adults. And some of these animals are really not, it doesn't matter how gentle they may be as cubs, but when they become full grown, they can pose a danger to society. So why they are just legally allowed to be purchased is beyond me. But it's just interesting that this is not the case in India.
Well, there are laws in this country, and I'm not familiar with all of them, but I was at a lecture that Wayne Pacell of HSUS gave, and he was also bemoaning the fact that the laws here in this country are not always followed. We don't have the people to go after
the enforcement,
all these people. But in terms of the wildlife trade, my friends all over the world, China, India, whatever, they're saying, hey, you guys in this country who are purchasing these animals. So we've definitely done our share to deplete a lot of the wildlife. And we could, with our funds, our money has bought this, and that's why are people smuggling them.
Interesting.
I would comment one thing that you said at the beginning of the talk today about traditional medicine. I wouldn't say India was a big contributor to that. That's mostly in China. So the wildlife trade is not contributing that much worldwide compared to some of the other countries in my life.
No, without a doubt. Even South Africa, there's a huge problem there. But it's just the point that it still does exist, and it really needs to stop. Now, one of the things that you mentioned was street performers. Why, when people are visiting India, why is it that they should not contribute or allow themselves to be entertained by these street performers?
Okay, well, first of all, like for the snake charmers, the teeth are removed from the snake, and they're very helpless. And for how long they actually live as a performer, and they don't last very long in that situation. And in terms of monkeys, the monkeys are stolen from their parents at an early age. I don't know if the parents, they're not actually shot the way they are in, when they steal the baby apes and things like that. The people, they don't have guns as much in India, but they are stolen and trained to be performers and used for begging. When the monkeys get older, and they will just simply be abandoned, and they haven't learned how to be a monkey. So people might say, oh, these people, that's their livelihood. Well, livelihoods have to change. Like the dancing moon bears, they've been. If you go to the Taj Mahal, you used to see those outside, and there were people. It was generations of people who had these bears as their livelihood. But they've been retrained by some groups, and people have to learn a different livelihood. Times do change. I was just reading a book about how the circus used to be, and they used to have the fat lady. I mean, we don't have those things anymore. So people have to have a new livelihood, which is really difficult to do in such a poor country.
Yeah, and especially with the circus, I think especially in this country, we have enough momentum to really get the laws changed when it does come to these circus acts in which the animals are used. I mean, some of the things that are going on are really heinous, but the point being that if you're traveling to India and you see these street performers, all you're doing by allowing them to entertain you is just contributing to what they're doing, which is really harmful to the animal. And actually, I've heard that the monkeys are trained to basically befriend tourists and then basically pickpocket them.
Well, yeah, I've heard that too. And then we had some on our VSPCA email report. We do these reports to say what's going on, and people can sign up to receive those. We had the monkey mobile phone thieves, and they were trained to steal mobile phones. So
I think you have pictures of them on your website.
Yeah, so then the monkeys they're another problem called the monkey menace. All these animals who become so-called menaces just because there's no room for them due to the human overpopulation. So India passed 1 billion people. They have, I guess, the same amount of people as in China. The land mass to India is much smaller than the United States. So there's 1 billion people. It's
really crammed in there.
Yeah, the cities are very crowded. And the state where we work, in the main animal shelter I help, it's a state that's smaller than the size of California. You have 75 million people just in that one state. So the animal issues kind of get thrown to the bottom of the pile in terms of their importance, when you have so many other issues you're dealing with.
Now, can you explain why cows are viewed as being sacred in India, just for people that really just are thinking with very antiquated information, because there's so much misinformation, not only here but abroad, that when you go to India, people are going to drop on their hands and knees and start praying to cows. So can you please just, for once and for all, set the record straight and explain why the cow is viewed as being sacred and how people interact with cows?
Okay, I'll try my best, but India is a very complex subject and really a different place. And, well, the cows, first of all, they're just viewed as sacred by the Hindu population. And the country of India is made up mostly of Hindus, Muslims, and Christians. So the Hindu population really does view the cow as sacred. This goes back to the time of Krishna and Krishna consciousness, and they just saw this very, very benevolent creature, the cow, that is so loving to its babies and allows itself to be milked. And so India worships the concept of mother, the holy mother, the mother of all, the goddess. And that so India's womanhood is elevated in principle. In reality, and there's a lot of abuse towards women as other places, not as much, of course, in some of the other countries. So when you have the concept of motherhood being elevated so highly, the cow is seen as the supreme mother. Also, she provides many products. The milk and the cow dung is used as fodder. Her babies were turned into, the male calves were turned into bullocks that plow the fields. That's in the old days. Nowadays, it's another story. But that's why, so in the idyllic past of India, simply living in the villages, things, I think, actually went pretty well. If you were of the right caste, that is. Does that help?
Well, the caste system is no more. Boy, you're going to bring us down the road of history here.
Yeah, the caste system is illegal, but of course, just like in any other country, that this sort of unwritten rules of society, and people with the right connections do better. So the caste system originally was a way to provide a livelihood to their children. So in other words, if you did a certain profession in your life, you were a blacksmith, then your children were assured that. But, it got abused, and that's another.
And if you were a street beggar, you were kind of stuck. But
well, it's hard to uplift yourself from the street if you're born on the street. That goes without saying for animal people or whatever.
Yes, and which brings us into actually the situation with when it comes to other animals. For example, the way that they are transporting some of these animals. Can you talk about some of the cruel animal transport systems that are in practice and what they're doing to what your organization as well as other organizations are doing to change this?
Well, because cow slaughter, because of these rules that the cow is sacred, the cow is not allowed to be slaughtered for meat, even though more and more Hindus are eating meat and Muslims, people are starting to eat meat. They're following the West, the same thing that's happening in China. People are wanting more and more meat. So the cows are transported very cruelly to places where they are allowed to be slaughtered. And because there's no legal slaughter, the abuses that go on are really beyond words to explain. So some people think maybe having legal slaughterhouses would be better. We're not getting into all that right now. So we, at the VSPCA shelter and many other activists in India, they rescue cows from just deplorable conditions and basically save their lives.
Now, you and I had spoken about another situation pertaining to plastic bags, and you had mentioned to me that you've been working to really do something to change the laws there, because plastic bags, it's not so much that they're just ending up in the landfills, but they're actually being eaten by the animals, especially cows.
Well, India has a very big trash problem, and more. There is no official trash pickup infrastructure except in the large cities. So where do people put their trash? Just in lots or whatever. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. I remember a big trash heap that we called it Beer Alley or something. And people would just throw their trash in there. I don't know. We had trash pickup then, too, but I don't know. What I'm saying is we're used to a more cleaner environment here. In India, the trash is everywhere, and people have bad habits. And so, of course, there's some sense of trying to improve people's habits. So since the plastic bags are just disposed of everywhere, they do wind up in animal stomachs. And maybe people have seen pictures of sea animals where you see plastic parts in them. It's really, I can hardly bear to look at these pictures. It's so unnatural to see plastic in the side, that animals have ingested and died from. So in our state of Andhra Pradesh, a state of 75 million people, the group I work with, VSPCA, has done some legal action, and the state has banned the colored plastic bags in the year 2000. The colored plastic bags are considered worse for the environment, And now we're trying to, I guess they attract the animals more, or maybe the dye is also worse for the landfill or for decomposing. So now we're trying to ban the white plastic bags also. And teach people, not to use them. We used to live without all these things. So recently we had a beautiful, beautiful bull that lived at the shelter for 8 years, and I'm just doing an update to our Facebook page right now about it. And he was a very special bull, and he all of a sudden collapsed. They didn't know what was wrong with him, and they called in the specialized vets, and they opened him up, and they found all these plastic bags. And so he must have had it in him all these years because there was no plastic at the shelter. So that's a big threat to the environment.
And that's something that people don't think about. I remember there was a lot of awareness many years ago in regards to the plastic rings that used to be when you would buy, say, a six-pack of soda or beer. They would use these it was like a plastic cuff that went around each can and each bottle. And they were finding them around the necks of seagulls and other marine-type birds because they would dump this stuff right into the ocean, and then the birds would, start looking around at eating the garbage, and they were dying from this.
Well, so I saw a duck here with one on his neck, and now I don't know. Have you seen it recently? I think you're supposed to cut them, but I don't know if every store does.
I think they stopped manufacturing them, and that's why they use cardboard containers to basically sell those types of beverages. But the point is that the plastic. Once again, this is something that happened, over 20 years ago, and now Eileen is talking about plastic bags being in the belly of a bull, and this is how many years ago, Eileen?
This is now.
Yeah.
Well, India still has. I don't know if everyone remembers how when you have a pop top aluminum can, now it sticks on it. They still have the kind that come off. That's a hazard. India is really behind the times. There's a lot of things there that are quite shocking to us, things that we're used to, that like in want ads, they're still allowed to ask for, a woman or a man. And so some of the gains that we're used to just haven't happened there yet.
Now, on the plus side, you have made some really great strides involving sea turtles. Can you tell our audience about what the project was about and what successes you've achieved with the sea turtles?
Oh, sure. We love to talk about the sea turtles. And the group I work with, VSPCA, Visakha Society for Protection and Care of Animals, they're located on the east coast of India, on the Bay of Bengal. And that's down the coast from Calcutta and up the coast a little bit. Now, sea turtles come in all over the world, and there's groups helping to preserve them, and so they're not they don't go extinct. They've been endangered for many years. So we have what's called the olive ridley sea turtles that mostly come in. And there was no group there that was really documenting this, because it's really this place that we work with. It's off the beaten track. And the animal shelters, there also have to be the wildlife shelters, and they promote vegetarianism also. We do all of that, and that's the same for most of the animal groups. So the wildlife officials, they aren't out there caring about the sea turtles. So the man we work with, Pradeep Nath, he went out and started counting the sea turtles year after year and proving to the authorities that these sea turtles come in and need protecting. And he went out and talked to all the fisher folk. We call them fisher folk instead of fishermen, and explaining to them that these sea turtles weren't just another big fish. We also did the same thing for dolphins, that people were just, out of ignorance. There was no one there who actually told them this is not, just a fish. And so the fisher folk started protecting the sea turtles, and actually even worshiping them as because there's some Hindu mythology about the turtle.
Wow.
And yeah, so to this day, we have volunteers that go out and check to count all the sea turtles. And a recent victory is that the government finally was convinced to help, and they are going to set up some hatcheries by the beach so that the public can know. I mean, people go to the beach there, they have no idea that these sea turtles come in and need protecting. The other threat that the sea turtles face, which is pretty much worldwide, is the huge fishing trawlers. And so we have to help convince the trawlers to use what's called the turtle excluder devices, or TEDs.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, they actually legally have to use them, but they don't. So sea turtles as a whole, we have conferences, and people get together to see how they can protect them, because otherwise they're washing in dead, and it's very distressing to see. But they, I don't know their listing right now in terms of endangered, but they sure are doing a lot better due to the efforts of so many people in that area.
Yeah, I think that the efforts are just tremendous, and I mean, you do so much more at the shelter. Can you talk about also the use of the biogas and vermicompost, and also the natural pesticides that you use at the shelter? I mean, it's just so wonderful to learn about these things, especially from so far away.
Sure. Well, this animal shelter is not like we think of. You go down and all the animals are in cages and waiting for adoptions, and they don't get adopted, they'll be euthanized. It's not like that. These animals have a home for life, and they're free roaming, or they certainly are up for adoption. But if not, they can stay there, and it's a real organic environment where the cows that are there, and we have over 600 of them,
wow.
They use cow dung and in something called a biogas plant. Now, this is basically just a more advanced version of what people have been doing worldwide since time began, is using the dung of animals dried for fuel. But it's a less crude form, and it still has to be collected, and then it's put in this big plant and heated, I think, to 2,000 degrees, and that'll make some electricity for cooking. Mm-hmm. And we also have what's called vermicompost. Verma just means worms, and most people are familiar with, their own little backyard worm compost. But there we have these huge pits, and so they have the worms and all the leftover leaves, and it makes a big, nice slurry, and that's used to fertilize all the plants. And so the plants are grown, and some of them are given to the rescued animals, like those that eat fruit, like monkeys and things like that. And we also sell some of the plants to make a little extra income. So it's a whole environment. I mean, people, we're trying to help people to still stay on their land. I mean, why are they having all these farmer suicides? Is people can't make a living on their land. So the cow is, seen as a sacred creature. It's not just for its meat. It's also for its what we call useful byproducts. So in the case of India, it's the cow dung, and also the urine is used as a pesticide. So it's a little bit of a different concept from what we, would think of here, but India is still very much a rural culture, and we want to, help people stay on the land and get the most from, if they have a cow, they can also benefit from those useful byproducts. But we don't mean meat or milk. It's the other byproducts.
Yeah, it's basically the excrements. Yeah. I just wanted to make one mention. Today happens to be Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and tell us about what the SPCA did with a particular dog.
Oh, well, the founder of the SPCA named the dog Martin Luther King Jr., and They really admire, they call it America. When I go there, I don't like to say I'm from America because, there's North America, Central America, South America, but we are called Americans. I say I'm from the States. But anyhow, they just admire Americans very much and, look to us for, for democracy and the kind of cynicism towards our politics hasn't really set in there. And, of course, Obama being elected was a huge, huge news there. And most Indians are also people of color, no matter what you see on Bollywood films. So.
Yeah, that's Bollywood. I've forgotten about how big Bollywood is. I think it's bigger, from what they say, it's even bigger than Hollywood.
Well, there's Bollywood and there's Tollywood, which is in Tamil Nadu, and there's a great tradition of Indian films that we really don't get in this country much.
Yeah, it's like a whole other world to just explore, Now,
it's a wonderful world. There's so much beauty and just kind-heartedness in India, and they're just trying really hard. But when people are just in poverty for so long, and there's just a lot of apathy that comes about, and it's just a beautiful place to visit.
Now, we have a question from the audience, and Kate has a question, and she wrote, isn't it bad karma, in India, isn't it bad karma to harm animals?
Yes, definitely, but it's also bad karma to beat your wife and, have put kids in child prostitution, all these things go on also. That's the karma situation is bad karma in terms of killing, and we've actually had problems with veterinarians who don't want to kill suffering animals because it's even mercy killing is against some of their religion. But we do euthanize animals if they're suffering. But that's on the most enlightened level, that it's bad karma. Yes, it is bad karma.
Now, we have another question from Twitter, and this is coming from Michael, and he wrote, I thought that there was no euthanasia in India.
It depends on the animal group, and generally there wasn't until recently. Well, didn't have to be euthanasia so much because most of the animals just died of disease. And so we've worked really hard at eliminating distemper from a lot of the animal shelters. Although some the diseases that we've eliminated in this country for pets, still rampant there. It depends on the animal shelter. There's 300 active groups, and each has their own policies. And a lot of people do not believe in letting an animal suffer, so we have mercy killing. Euthanizing of healthy and adoptable animals, no, that really hasn't started yet, but the way things are going with the lack of adoption and fostering and the infrastructure that we've built up in the West all these years, that has yet to really hit India, where people are still looking to buy, who are starting to want a pet. They're still wanting to buy a purebred from out of India, or they're still wanting to buy a new animal and not buy, adopt an old animal. So I don't really know where that's going with the euthanizing of healthy animals. I mean, nobody wants to do it anywhere, really.
Yeah, but they still allow it over here. That's what the sad reality is, and hopefully that won't be the case elsewhere, and we can get the laws changed here.
Right. So we have no-kill shelters in India, but if we can take in every animal that's wandering the street, we're at capacity. So, maybe sometimes think about it. Maybe the animal shelters here shouldn't take all the animals wandering the street, and people should see what's going on. See the suffering.
No, that's a really excellent point. You know, when people don't see it, out of sight, out of mind. And that's what it boils down
that's
to.
the difference. You know, people say, "Oh, I can't go to India and see the suffering." You know, it's not. It's here in this country. We just have it behind closed doors. That's all. So, you know, when you an animal that has it doesn't look that great, has some mange, whatever, it still would rather be out on the street than being killed in a shelter.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Now, we have another question from Twitter. This is coming from Pepper, who wrote, wasn't there some type of crisis with owls because of Harry Potter?
Yeah, there was recently a big upsurge in people wanting to buy owls. That wasn't in the area I work in. That was the more developed, where people have a little more money in Mumbai. So that's a given. When there's any movie that comes out, I mean, the same thing that happened here with 101 Dalmatians, with whatever, animal of the day. It's illegal to have, actually, they don't, I think it's illegal to even have parrots as pets. You know, that's considered wildlife. But I did hear that. I don't know what happened. There's so many groups working really hard to help the wildlife, and they sure need everyone's support.
Thank you for answering that. Now, another question that I have concerns the elephants. What are the problems concerning elephants, especially in captivity and also being in the wild?
Okay, well, India has elephants in captivity that include zoos, circuses, and temples. Also, some owned elephants. The animals in the wild are under great threat, much worse than Africa because of the landmass of India. There's just really nowhere left for them to go. And they go rampaging through farmers' fields and doing a lot of destruction. I was in a part of South Karnataka state, and we saw these little platforms where farmers would go and sleep above and watch out for elephants. And then so if elephants came, they had some elephant deterrent devices, or they have to build electric fences to keep the elephants off their land. So the wild animals are under threat due to habitat loss. The animals in captivity, India has a long tradition of, if you were very wealthy, you had an elephant. And the temples still have elephants, and you can go on these elephant rides. But there's really great abuse. Some of these elephants are kept in very, very small environments and not let out at all, and they're trained very cruelly with all sorts of methods that from a very young age. So some of the groups are trying to do something to make an elephant sanctuary. India actually doesn't have any elephant sanctuary. One of the groups I work with in Bangalore is at the forefront of making the first sanctuary. It's only 5 acres. Also, the laws where if the elephants are abused, the Indian animal groups try to seize the elephant, but that's all a big battle. Elephants are expensive and valuable, so sometimes have to go to court. India passed a law where to make it illegal to keep elephants in zoos and circuses, and this was amazing. It's astounding. It happened 2 years ago, but where are the elephants? They're still in the zoos and circuses because where are they going to go? Who's going to take them? How can they possibly be rehabilitated?
And who can afford to feed them?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I can't imagine what someone would think by saying, oh, yeah, you know what, I want to buy an elephant, knowing that they weigh over a ton and they could easily step on you and crush you. And people, it just amazes me how stupid people can be. I remember I had one wildlife expert on, and he said that bears and raccoons, you show them something once and they learn. They don't have to be taught twice. But human beings, we just do it over and over and over. But yet the animals seem to get it the first time. And when it comes to an animal like an elephant, I've seen an elephant, I think, once in my life at the zoo, the Bronx Zoo, and that was about it. And they're enormous. I just can't imagine why someone would want one of these creatures as a pet.
Well, it was a tradition. They were used in the old days for war. They, if you ever seen any of these movies, and India had a lot of rich maharajas back then. So they had the rich people and the poor people, and nobody in between. And the rich people would have elephants. And also, they're seen as a blessing. The elephant is a representation of one of the Hindu gods called Ganesh, who actually was part elephant. So if you go to a temple, you can get a blessing from an elephant. But sometimes most times the temple doesn't take very good care of the elephant, and there's a lot of abuses that go on due to religion. People may be surprised to know that there's bad karma to hurt animals. They still have sacrifice in the Hindu religion, and not the more enlightened temples. But this goes on, and this is one of the things that the shelter I work with, the VSPCA, has stopped in their city. The streets do not run red with blood during these holidays anymore.
What were they doing? Like, what type of animals were they sacrificing?
Well, goats mostly, sheep. I mean, it still goes on in the Muslim religion, big time. It went on in the Hindu and in the Christian and the Jewish tradition, thousands of years ago. Sacrifice is now done symbolically, or an offering. I mean, what is that all about anyhow? Why is it done? It's done because you want to give something of that you value to the higher spirit, but don't take someone else's life to do it. So people feel that this is a tradition. This is what the animal groups in India are working hard to change. And I mean, I'm speaking here in this country. There's thousands of people in India working on this. It's just that there's another billion people who need to be educated.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, June.
I was going to say, I know that you work with a very large group of people, and when we think about it here, what happens when we work with an organization such as yours, it may seem like it's really hard to make a difference, but the thing is that when you do donate to organizations such as Eileen's, a little bit does go far. So can you talk about that and just exactly, I mean, even if you have a small campaign, what that would mean and how far it will go in India?
Sure. Well, India still has a fantastic rate to the U.S. dollar. I mean, when we go there, we're very well off no matter what our income is. So our VSPCA shelter, we employ 40 people because there's over 1,000 animals. And these 40 people from the surrounding villages are getting a good work and working in a place that they love and learning about kindness towards animals. And they're getting a little over $2 a day. And if they didn't get that work, they might have to be breaking rocks on the road for a living, or maybe not have any work. So the veterinarians get more. They get about $500 a month. So, and then to do the cat spay or dog neuter, it costs about $10. And any of the donations that come through my organization go directly to the India animal groups, and we keep up with them as best we can. They send grants, and and I visit when I can just to make sure. I mean, I'm a representation to the our government because I am a nonprofit 501c3. So I have to prove to the IRS that if people are getting a tax deduction, that their funds are going towards a place that is doing the work that's promised. And that's the role that Help Animals India does, is to assure any donations are going to a good place. And we don't keep any fancy offices here or salaries of, and So any donation does a lot of good in India to help the animals.
We have another question from the audience. Pepe would like to know if you have American veterinarians that go over to India to train veterinarians over there as far as the latest techniques in, say, spaying, neutering, or any of the surgical procedures for healing the animals.
Oh, that's a very good question, and I'm glad she brought that up because that's an ongoing project. And mostly we get veterinary students who want to go over there to add to their repertoire and learn things. Veterinarians are very welcome to go and volunteer. It's just that they usually, have busy practices and they're not able to. But we had a veterinarian come after when the tsunami happened in 2005. It really put us on the map and people learned about us. So we had a veterinarian come and she trained the SPCA vets in how to do cat spay and neuter. And that is not known throughout many parts of India. It's sort of like rabbits are here, where not every vet is very expert in it. And rabbit spaying, so cats as pets are so new to India. So we've had to train the vets on how to do cat spay and neuter. And in terms of the latest technique, sure, we would love to just get an X-ray machine. In one part of India, my friend who runs a cat shelter, she has a friend who works in a hospital, and she sneaks a cat in there occasionally to get an X-ray. No animal shelters in India have X-ray machines or any of that. So these parts of India don't have human hospitals. So getting the help to the animals, it's all new, and the veterinarians who want to come over and volunteer, they're having more and more programs to teach veterinarians in India better techniques, because mostly the government-run veterinarian schools just teach about farm animals, the cows. So sure, send an inquiry if you know of any vets who want to come and volunteer. That would be wonderful.
How can people get in touch with you, Eileen, and especially if there are any veterinarians that are in our audience, whether you're a student or if you are about to retire, or if you just want to do something that would be really wonderful and really help a very large population of people?
Well, to learn more about India's animals and some of the things I discussed today, we have a lot on the website, which is helpanimalsindia.org, or I think it's also .com, so it's helpanimalsindia.org. And that also leads to the main animal shelter we help, which is V as in Victor, VSPCA.org. And that's the Shaka Society for Protection and Care of Animals. And that's the main group we help. And we also have a Facebook page for VSPCA, and we're promoting that a lot. You do not have to log in or be a member. You can just view it, and that's facebook.com. VSPCA, and those are the best ways to learn more. And we also accept donations of pet-related items, and we're also looking for people who are going to India to take things over if they're going to these parts of India, because shipping is very expensive.
And what about companies that produce pet food or pet products? Would they be able to ship products over to you or over to India? Is that an option also if organizations or small companies want to get involved?
Sure, we accept with 1,000 different kind of animals and all sorts of pet-related programs and different animal groups throughout India that have different needs and concerns. We can accept just about anything. It's just a question of getting the items over, and I can accept some things here in Seattle, or they can be sent directly to India. That would be wonderful. And we need, just the animals in the shelter can use toys, or if we adopt out some, they can use leashes. And there's some the pet items are just starting to become available in India. There's some items we simply can't get, like KMR, which is a kitten feeding formula, and that's not made in India, so I have to get it here and get it over there. So those costs really add up. So any donations are most welcome and desperately needed.
Thank you. And one other question, and this is from our audience. This is coming from Sonia. She'd like to know if people still continue to buy purebred animals over there, especially with the existing crisis.
Well, there's not still. They're just starting to. And India is a very, the caste system was abolished, but just to say it quite frankly, they're very status-oriented, and so they want what the foreign breeds. They want to copy us. So they are starting to have pet shows and pet trade, and people turn up their noses to the street dogs. Adorable puppies are available for adoption. So we try and promote those as best we can. But as people are getting more income, they are interested in the foreign breeds. And, they make just because there's so many dogs on the street that they just don't accept them. And so we're doing our best to try and promote the community dogs for adoption. It's actually, the community dogs are actually a mixture of the what's called the pie dog. It's a native Indian dog. And it's a wonderful dog. And they're very smart. And they're actually quite calm. And, if you cross the street, the dogs will cross with you. They're not as territorial as pet dogs, because when you tie up a dog all day, it'll bark and bark and bark. These dogs roam around, and they have their friends, and they're actually good community members. They watch out for burglars, and a lot of people really like them, but, there's just no place for them in a very modern city. So trying to promote their adoption as best we can.
Thank you. And one other question that I'd like to squeeze in. Leah would like to know if there are any celebrities that have, like Mickey Rourke is doing something with companion animals. Are there any celebrities that are working in India to promote awareness?
None that I know. I think I forget who it was, went over for the elephants at one point. Goldie Hawn did something. There's some Indian celebrities who do things, like mostly with PETA. We're on the ground with all the animals in the shelter. So we're not very high profile because we, just actually taking care of the animals. I don't know of any celebrities, but if you know of some, have them contact us, and that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Where do you see the organization heading? Where do you see things going as far as the people of India when it comes to the situation with the strays? I mean, do you think that it's going to take forever to make any headway, or do you think that there is a lot of hope and it looks very optimistic?
Well, I just heard for the first time that some more people are adopting cats who've learned from us going over that cats make good pets. And there's a lot of Indians in the United States now. More and more and more. And they're also learning that something is being done. So they're getting inspired and saying, hey, we thought, we just ignored this. We just thought it was too big an issue. We just closed our eyes to this. And now we see that some groups are doing such good things. So, we want to help also. So I sure hope that continues. I have Microsoft matching funds, and just more and more awareness towards making the world a better place for everybody. Kindness to animals is kindness for children too, to grow up in a better world, and everybody knows that.
And we still have a couple more questions, and I figured I'd ask. Jerry would like to know, what is the hardest animal for you to adopt out?
Well, we really don't have that many adoptions. I know that's hard to understand, that people, the only animal they do adopt, if at all, would be a puppy. People don't really like cats. They're superstitious towards cats, and cats are really not that common as pets. So we don't have adoption. The parrots that we rescue from the wildlife trade, they are released. They're not really pets. India is a place where parrots run around in the trees, and and the monkeys, they can't be pets, and cows. So we don't really have that many animals that get adopted.
Now, people cannot have, I just want to get this straight, people cannot have birds as pets in India.
Well, they do, but officially it's part of wildlife, and they're not supposed to. So,
because I remember seeing one particular Shirley Temple movie. I think it was she was in A Little Princess, where there was a gentleman who had, I think he was from India, and he had a parrot that was on his shoulder. And
sure. I mean, I'm just talking about that's the guidelines, the wildlife guidelines, and there's many pet shops all over India with selling birds.
Interesting.
We wish we had time to go around and stop them. But people do want their pets. And so it's up to us to, help them take the best care of them and learn how to.
We have another question. This is from Charles. He'd like to know if law enforcement has thought about retraining the dogs to be used as service dogs, or if the dogs could be used for helping the blind or people that have some type of incapacitation.
Well, there are police dogs in India, and they have their own training department. The VSPCA has actually been training the police department in learning about India's animal welfare laws. They trained 3,000 police cadets in 2008 because even the police cadets were unfamiliar with the animal welfare laws. And sure, do you know how much money it costs to train a dog for the blind? I think it's like tens of thousands of dollars. So certainly, any of those dogs could be trained. I was at a blind school. It is really, those kids don't have anything, even desks. So, whether they're going to get a dog later on, that would be an optimal. We just don't have the infrastructure right now to provide the dogs for the disabled. They don't even have wheelchairs available to them.
Well, to a certain degree, even though there are not many programs in place, I think one of the benefits of being in the situation that you're in is that you can learn from the mistakes that have been made, especially here as well as in other countries.
Well, that's what we're hoping. Just to bypass all of the mistakes, just like they went from no phones to mobile phones. They didn't get the landlines in at all. So
it's right over that.
Yeah, so I'm hoping to skip over all the, all the other mistakes we've made, hopefully. We're working towards that.
Well, with all the wonderful work that you're doing, I know that you're making great strides, and it must be exciting to know that there are so many people that are interested in your work. And Eileen, can you just tell our audience how they can get in touch with you once again and also reach out to you on Facebook and Twitter?
Okay. Our website is www.helpanimalsindia.org or .com. And on Facebook, it's www.facebook.com/V as in Victor, SPCA, VSPCA. And we also have the website, vspca.org. And I know June's encouraging me to do the Twitter more. We have twitter.com/VSPCA. I haven't, and we have that also. And our email address is also info@helpanimalsindia.org.
And folks, once again, if you do have any plans to visit India, or if you are a veterinarian or know someone who is, try to encourage them to reach out to Eileen and get involved with everything that's going on in India, because it really is a great opportunity not only to change the way that things are, that currently exist, rather, in India, mostly at the ground level, but to make things so much better than where they are in many places, especially here. And as she pointed out, instead of going step by step and repeating some of the mistakes that we've made over here, perhaps maybe with these animals we can go from, no phone to a cell phone, only instead of it being phones, it being different issues pertaining to animals. Instead of struggling to make a little tiny change, we can actually help get the major changes that are needed as quickly as possible. And I think the benefit is that the society itself does have a natural respect for these creatures, especially due to religious beliefs and whatnot, and I think that is something to your benefit. And hopefully the next time that you come on the show, we can hear about all the other wonderful things that you're doing in addition to all the work with the sea turtles. It's just so nice to hear so much progress being made.
Well, June, you just have such a great positive show. I think it should be called The Positive Organic View.
And, thank you so much.
Okay, well, thank you so much for everything.
Everyone, we are out of time, but thank you so much for tuning in. And if you've missed the show, you can always subscribe to The Organic View on iTunes or visit our podcast archives at www.theorganicview.com. Have a great day, everyone.